continue hearing from Carina in what we've labeled the skills session.
Okay.
Hearing and learning.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so I'm going to start with saying it's great to see you do these award ceremonies because actually part of what civil society needs is recognition. And what you just did there was recognition for participating in the course and taking that kind of leadership. And civil society needs to be recognised. And I think the table that was here earlier on discussing, you know, the situation with Sweden and relying on the state is so the UK and Sweden are very different. I agree. But actually, part of the problem is, you know, it's our fault, and we've let it get like this. And in the UK, we have the NHS, we have the welfare state, and we're very proud of those things. But you know, what we faced over the past 10 years is that they are starting to be cut, and it's our fault that we're in the mess because we relied on the state so much, and maybe Sweden will be there too. And so it's a challenge to civil society to say, you know, let's not be reliant on the state. Yes, there is a service to be provided, but actually this is about recognition and recognition of civil society that we should be demanding first and foremost, and start from there. So before I move on to the skills session, actually I'm going to ask for permission to share a video, which I didn't share this morning. Which is kind of why do we do this? What does it result in? So I'm going to show a video which hopefully, if I can find it, if it's still there, will it be still there? Oh, my thing got closed, didn't it? Here it is. Yes. Which is a culmination of all the things that I've talked about this morning. So around recognition, what happens if different community groups come together and act on social justice issues that they've decided upon, what matters to them most, and how can we put an agenda, a people's agenda, to the traditional decision-making makers. So in 2010, at our last general election, just before the last general election, we hosted a citizens' assembly which consisted of about 2,500 people from our different organisations coming together to put forward our citizens' agenda to David Cameron, Nick Clegg and Gordon Brown, so the three party leaders. This wasn't them talking to us about their manifesto, this was us putting our agenda to them and how they would work with us going forward. And yeah, I'll let the video do the talking and then maybe teach off the back of it. So if I press this, this might work. What does that say?
Quit full screen mode.
It's good,
okay,
just
Olivia.
That's what it says. That's what it means.
Was working this morning.
It's gonna work.
Yeah?
I think the internet's a little bit slower, actually.
Should I just leave it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
Well, you can check
Less
it.
and less sure.
Just refresh it.
Yes. How do I refresh it? There you go. F5.
No.
We're not very technical at Citizens. We only joined Twitter last year. And it results in things like this. There you go. No, it's still not working. I'm sorry. Right.
Oh, here we go.
It's working.
Woo. Now the sound isn't though.
election campaign enters its last few days with the three main party leaders travelling the country to win over undecided voters.
David Cameron, Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg will be taking part in a conference being held by Citizens UK. The leaders will explain to the audience why they think theirs would be the best government for civil society.
David Cameron's just arrived in the last couple of minutes here at Methodist Central Hall in Westminster. Nick Clegg is just arriving.
Yesterday, Andrew Marr of the BBC dubbed this the fourth debate. But as our chair, Bishop Brown, said, at the moment, this is not.
We are seeking a respectful working relationship with whoever is to be the next Prime Minister and whoever is to be the leader of the opposition.
We are not an audience. We are here as an assembly of organised civil society institutions.
I'd like to welcome and introduce South London citizens.
My name is Edwin Chow, and I'm from the Chinese Migrants Network in Westminster.
I'm Dan Furr from the Young Muslim Voices Project Islington.
My name is Jennifer from St Anselm's Church Staff, part of the West London Citizens. My name is Imogen Moore and I'm a leader at the School of Oriental and African Studies.
Today we seek a respectful, productive, two-way relationship with the next government.
There's going to be 2,500 people in Methodist Central Hall.
I talk about a big society. You are a big society.
Let's take this unique opportunity, and this is a unique opportunity, for once to do things differently.
When people say that people are apathetic and indifferent, when people say that there are no great causes left, let them come to Citizens UK. Let them come here.
Hi, my name is Theo. I'm 14 years old and I want to be a lawyer. If there were paid a living wage, then we wouldn't have to eat lunch for a week.
You asked for a living wage in the public sector. As you know, I think this is a good and attractive idea. And if we win the election, we are committed to a fair pay review.
Firm commitments on developing the working party to look at the business and financial case of the living wage concept government procurements.
Will you work with us to establish the living wage as the new minimum for the public sector?
My name is Tracy. I have lived here for 7 years and have put down roots here. I have never sought benefit from government. I want only to work legally and to contribute to British society, the country that I love.
Now your next challenge is to restore sanctuary and to end child detention. It is not acceptable what happens now, not acceptable at all. I will make sure citizens
amidst the clapping, a firm commitment then to developing a working party to look at alternatives to child detention in relation to those seeking sanctuary. Excellent, thank you.
Let us put also an end to the shameful practice of locking up small children, innocent.
Peace, the solution for humanity. Peace is what we need, you and me.
And finally, there is your challenge to government to facilitate affordable owner-occupied housing through community land trusts. Here we have a very clear commitment, and it's in there, in the pages of our manifesto. We want to see community land trusts across the country making home ownership more affordable, more fairly distributed. It makes sense and it will happen under a Conservative government.
I'm delighted to see us come together in support of a great liberal idea of giving government land to communities. So yes, to government land being loaned to communities, to give homes and hopes to those who are homeless and hopeless.
And so I stand before you, proud that Labour chooses to support the living wage, the interest rate cap, the community land trust, and a return to community banking. These are your choices, and these are our choices too. Never will go out. As if you fight for fairness, you will always find in me a friend, a partner, and a brother.
If I'm Prime Minister, I will meet with a delegation of Citizens UK every year. And yes, I will attend at least 2 of your national assemblies over the course of the next parliament.
annually and to attend 2 assemblies.
Yes, of course we should be. Yes, of course you should be given the respect that you deserve as an equal partner in the governance of this country.
Yeah, so that's what we do. I remember being there, and was a wonderful experience of just seeing politicians being held to account, and we have it on video and we can hold them to account for their commitments that they've made to us, including meeting with us every year, which we have a meeting with. Well, we met with Nick Clegg and David Cameron actually at the end of last year, and hopefully we'll meet them again this year. And you're probably thinking, well, how did we get all those people in the room thinking about the same thing? Because we had one of our biggest issues was to end the detention of children for immigration purposes, and immigration can be quite a controversial issue and can divide lots of different communities. And we have some very conservative churches and organisations that perhaps wouldn't necessarily campaign for pro-immigration, but because they had children within their organisations who potentially could have been detained or removed from the country because of the immigration system, they felt motivated to act. And so it was around finding really the core self-interest of not only our institutions, what mattered most to them, but also to the politicians. And so a lot of those campaigns have been campaigned on quite a long time, and ending child detention had been campaigned on for a very long time. But what mattered this time around was the Conservatives came out really strongly around family and the right of the child. And so it was the core self-interest of the different political parties that we could tap into around our campaigns. So the session that I want to look at now is around self-interest, and how do we identify someone else's self-interest. And the first way that we start to think about it is actually identifying our own self-interest. So I'm going to do a practical tool on myself about my self-interest, so you can see, get to know. Oh, shall I turn that off?
Yeah.
How do I turn it off?
That's a good question.
So I'll leave you to do it. So this is a practical tool called the stick person, and we use it when we're thinking about what motivates people. So whenever thinking about our own self-interest, I'm going to write out there. Can everyone see when I'm writing up here? Yes. Is that all right? When this goes down. So here you go. Here's Carina. I've got very curly hair normally, so there you go. It's a bit better. That's better. We need to think about some of the core things that motivate us. What are our core driving forces? The first thing that we think about, particularly in community organising, because institutions are so important for us, and we work with institutions. What are the institutions in your life? Okay, what institutions are important to you? So I'm not of faith, even though I went to a Catholic school when I was younger. I'm not of faith, so I don't have a faith group per se. I don't have children yet, so my children don't go to school. So I struggle a little bit with this one. But my organisation, I guess, which is important for me, where I learn, where I've been developed, I've grown significantly since I've started working there, is Citizens UK. But I would identify that as the most important institution in my life. But hopefully soon, when it goes through, is I'm setting up a school as well, outside of my 50-hour-a-week job. I am setting up a school, so hopefully that will become an important institution as well. All right. But for other people, this could be their university, their trade union, their refugee group, their faith group. So what are the institutions? Because often that's where the values are. Okay? And you can think about what are the values that motivate people. Then you think about the most important relationships in that person's life. And for me, it's my family. My grandma, as I shared earlier, was a massive inspiration to me. I come from a family of teachers. My grandma, my granddad, my mum, my brother, my auntie, my uncle were all teachers. And that's, I guess, inspired me to set up a school. And is very much in my DNA. So my family are really important. And then my boss at Citizens UK is incredibly important to me. Jonathan Cox. So that's an important relationship. Then we need to think about kind of fears and hopes. So I'll put it here. So my hopes are to inspire a generation through my school. This isn't working very well, is it, this pen? Can you read it?
Yeah.
Is that okay? To inspire a generation through the school and through also the leadership development that I do through Citizens UK. I share the story of Cynthia Masiwa, who has developed incredible amounts since I've been working with her, and it's my hope to inspire more people to be involved in public life. My hope is to have an impact in the 2015 general election. And a fear is to not have stories to tell my grandchildren. Or my children, but my grandchildren mainly. I want them to be proud of their grandma. Like I am with my grandma. My great-grandma was part of the suffragette movement. It was really kind of inspired me, I guess. And I want to do the same thing to mine. Then, got to think about experiences. And this is often what motivates people. Is something that they have experienced themselves. Struggle, something that they fought for, a change that they've achieved. And so for me, I shared earlier, was when I was living in France in 2006, the riots. It was when my stepdad was made redundant. And as a result of it, got to know very quickly the services that were available for those that were suffering with mental health issues. It affected my stepdad and my mum, and quickly became aware that there weren't the services necessary. And I had to support my family. At the stage I was paying my mum's mortgage for a while because they were struggling. And so for me, that's been a massive experience over the last couple of years about how people sometimes can be in these situations. And it's really made me realise that mental health is a bubbling issue in the UK, particularly with the economic crisis. And then also I grew up in the Caribbean. So the West Indies is kind of, in my formative year, was really important to me. And then we would like to think about how, because it's not all jobs and profession and kind of awful experiences. It's also about how this person likes to spend their time and their money. So, spend time and money. I box, so boxing is important to me. I box 4 times a week, and it's really important that I do that. I surf, and that's how I spend my money. I spend a lot of money surfing and travelling. I used to DJ, so hip hop and vinyl is important. I spend a lot of money on that. And vintage clothes is also how I spend my money. So that's me in my spare time, and this is kind of yeah, this is who Carina is. So in a snapshot, you could kind of think about what motivates me, why I do what I do, my challenges sometimes, my family and my experiences of my family have been a massive challenge, but that motivates me to kind of work on the issues that I work on. And often you find if you do that for yourself, you can then start to think about, well, how do I identify these things in someone else as well? Because once you've identified it in yourself, you can find other people that have the same self-interest, the same motivation, the same values, maybe some of the similar experiences, and then that's when the kind of the common ground, the common interests are identified, then you can start to work together on those issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Good. So how do we identify someone else's self-interest? Is the next stage. So as an organizer, I spend most of my time meeting people. This is why things like that, I'm not very good at. Computers, Twitter. I noticed someone tweeted at me earlier. Something popped up on my phone. I think it was Anna tweeted at me, which was a bit of a shock still. We're very old-fashioned because we believe that relationships are formed face-to-face. And if you are going to identify someone's self-interest, and if you are going to build a relationship around a common self-interest, then it can't be done online. It can't be done on Facebook, it can't be done over the phone, it can't be done on email. It has to be done face-to-face, which means this work is slow and painful. But as an organizer, I said earlier that I have 15 face-to-face meetings a week to identify people that might want to work together. And we call these very simply the one-to-one. A one-to-one conversation. It has to be one-to-one. It can't be 1 to 4 people because you can't build a relationship with someone. You can't identify what really matters to people if there's 4 or 5 of you sat around the table. It becomes very quickly, it becomes about business, about things, about the keys to the building, or about the fundraising application. What we're trying to do here is very old-fashioned, and it's really getting to the core of what motivates people. And we forget to do this most of the time. Who spends, and I'm going to ask you, who spends maybe even 10% of your time getting to know your colleagues, getting to know people really at what matters, what drives them? Does anyone? You do. Great. So we're starting. Booking the time in is a start. And making sure it's face-to-face is important and just one-to-one. And what we're trying to do is share something about us and what motivates us. And by doing that, we can encourage someone else to open up and identify and kind of share what matters to them too. And when you have these conversations, you're trying to find a common ground, things that you might work on together. You're trying to find shared issues. So do you both care about youth unemployment? You'll try a street lighting. I mean, those are simple things sometimes that people really care about are just outside our doorstep. The paving, the pavement outside the school hasn't been fixed for years. And so parents will talk about, you'd be surprised that the amount of conversations that happen between parents outside the school gates. And it's often things about the pavement not being fixed or the lighting not being fixed. So it's kind of identifying shared issues. You're trying to find people, and it came up earlier. With anger. This is really important. This isn't passion. I'm passionate about surfing and vintage clothes and boxing to an extent, I guess. But I'm angry about the situation of the mental health services in the UK. I'm angry about youth unemployment because my sister was unemployed for so many years. Those are the things I'm angry about. I'm not passionate about them. So you're trying to find issues that people are angry about, because when you're angry, you act. Yeah, it's that anger that drives you to take action on something. So we're trying to, in these conversations, we're trying to find out whether or not people have that kind of that burning feeling and sensation inside them that they want to take action on. And you're looking for leaders as well. So those with, we've discussed it earlier on, those with leaders, those with following, those that are in institutions, that you can kind of start to work together. This is why we do them. And the biggest question that we ask when we do a one-to-one is why? Why did you want to train as a deacon? You know, when I asked this earlier, why did you want to train as a deacon? Well, you know, it's going back, why did you want to become an imam? Because the minute you start to ask why, these questions will start to be answered. And we often kind of say, oh, well, you know, what do you do? What do you do in your role? And then that often becomes business. Well, I do these fundraising applications and I run this training and blah, blah, blah. Well, why do you do it? Well, really, what got you interested in it? And what motivates you? And this question is never really asked. And that's the difference, I guess, between community development and community organising, is that community development will often come to a community and present a project and say, this is what needs to happen for you. Whereas if you start to ask the why question, then you can start to identify really what matters to those people and what are the solutions, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So just quickly then, they're not chats. This is not about where you go and have your, which restaurant you go to and what serves the best Eritrean food, and where you get your hair done. This is face-to-face, as I said, so it's not over social media. You know what, you can have these conversations in 30 minutes. That's all it takes. So you can fit them in your schedule. And you need next steps. If you like that person, have a next step, have another meeting. Invite them to something, invite them to a training, invite them to a meeting that you're going to have. Otherwise you'll lose them. People are so busy, they're not good, you know, you'll lose them in your network. Does that okay? Any questions before I'm going to ask you to do these? Yeah.
So you basically gather all this information and connect people.
Yes.
As well, yeah.
So, I mean, there's different ways that the one-to-one is basically the kind of the core of my work. That's probably 80% of my time I spent on one-to-one conversations. And I do partly to build a team, to bring people together that care about the same thing, partly to identify issues that maybe that team couldn't take action on, and thirdly to kind of think of solutions as well. So it's kind of part listening, part building a team. They have different applications depending where we are on our sort of organising cycle, if that makes sense. But I would never really, I don't sit in a one-to-one conversation with a piece of paper, ever. I go away and I reflect and I write what's important. Because you can't build a genuine relationship if you're there with a notepad writing questions and research. This is not research. This is genuine relationship building. So what you want at the end of it is a relationship where you've connected maybe on some of these things. And it's not understanding. So this is the key difference. I'm not expected to understand everyone that I meet. Everyone's had very different experiences to me, but I can relate to certain things. I can relate to, I don't know, someone's experience of living in a different country, because I lived in a different country when I was growing up. I don't understand their experience, but I can relate to it potentially.
Is that okay? So 2 questions, I suppose. Do you invite someone to one-to-one? I mean, are you kind of open with your motives?
Yeah.
And second, do you are you open with your own relating? I mean, that could take a lot of time from the 30 minutes.
Yeah. So whenever I'm setting them up, it will always be, I've number one, credential myself. So Father David has told me that I should meet with you because I hear you're doing great stuff. I'd like to get to know you and to find out a little bit more about what you're doing and why you're doing it, kind of thing. So I'd always credential myself and set the meeting up to be like that, because otherwise you arrive and they expect something different and they expect it to be a business meeting, or so setting the scene is really important. In terms of the second question, so am I open about myself, or was that the question?
Sure. I mean, since you said you don't have to understand, but you can relate.
Yeah.
Is it important to show that you relate, or not really?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like every meeting that I don't have a framework like some people do, but like I have a different way of doing it. So I would always say, thanks for meeting with me. This is going to take half an hour if you'll take 45 minutes maximum, because sometimes you want to get out card. You might want to get out of there. So you want a clear time, and also you're respecting someone's time as well. Like, this is going to last 30 to 45 minutes. And then I'd always share my political introduction. So I have like an introduction, which is why I do what I do, and which is why I spent time when I opened the session this morning. I told you everyone about myself. It's important that I share why I do what I do. So you can start to understand these things. So I would always start the conversation with sharing something about myself. And, I've got loads of stories to share. Loads. They're political stories, things that I've got, trouble that I've got into, campaigns that I've won, personal motivations. So depending on the situation, I'll kind of think about, okay, what's the best angle to come in at? And what should I share in order to kind of try and build a relationship and get someone else to open up as well. So this is about getting someone else to be relational and open up and share their self-interest, which isn't common. People aren't used to being asked these types of questions, so it can be quite countercultural. So it's important that you set the scene first.
Okay, and so how is this different from networking, I suppose? Or what is this kind of the backbone or the one networking method? But it seems like you have the power position here still.
So networking, I guess, is, I don't really go to networking events, and when I do, I feel really uncomfortable because it feels quite surface level. Whereas what I'm trying to do is really get to the core of what motivates us. No, it's not one way at all. Like you're trying to build a relationship. Ultimately, my goal is to build a relationship. If I want to, if I feel that person is someone I want to work with, or it will want to join Citizens UK. So in order to build a relationship, it has to be two-way. Absolutely. I can't let it be just me leading the conversation. It becomes a sharing and listening, and I will ask probing questions to try and get the other person to kind of go into what matters to them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, I have a question about this. So when you do...
Can't hear you, please.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I have a question about these first, you said that, for example, maybe you would introduce yourself like, Father so-and-so told me about you, but then you also have to explain that, you're your own independent entity, like you don't work for that institution who have recommended you. Do you get, I have two questions actually, do you get then the person that you're meeting is wondering, well, if you don't represent that organization, what is your interest in this? And then, and do you lay it out such as to say like, well, I'm, sort of, when I hear you, I think you're sort of like finding, one profile with one and seeing if you match with another profile, like you told us about the church, Pentecostal church, and the gay rights charity. Even that, I would be interested if you have time or you don't have a lot of time, like how did you come up with the profile so you thought, okay, these two ideas match each other, and then you're like a matchmaker, or
Yeah, so I'm looking for talent.
yes,
Is what ultimately I'm looking
Yeah.
for talent, looking for people that want to do things
yeah,
and want to be part of rebuilding civil society and take action on social justice issues, and that involves some of these things. That,
Yeah.
you know, that would involve those. But I'm never I don't go into these conversations with an agenda.
yeah,
I don't go in thinking, oh, this person's going to be interested in this. Absolutely not, because they could be someone in a Black Pentecostal church could be interested in something that I never thought that they would be interested in, and then I'd be restricting them from being involved in something. So I have to be the listener, and then through process of kind of getting there, it's not just me kind of connecting two people, it's about them bringing them into the organisation, and then slowly they will then build relationships with the others that are acting on those issues as well. What was the first question?
Yeah, it was just that, so you make it clear to the,
Oh,
even
yes,
if you
in terms of the
if you
organisation.
recommend it,
Yeah.
you say, I mean, maybe they could feel that if you're recommended by this institution, do you work for them?
Yeah, so I would always say, I'm a community organiser, I work for Citizens UK. I'm going to come on to Citizens UK in a bit, but let me just tell you a little bit about myself.
Okay.
So I always come back to Citizens UK and tell stories and share my kind of professional role, but to start with, it will be relational. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, good. So I'm going to get you to how long have I got? Till 20 past, right?
Yeah, 10 past,
30. Okay. So I'm going to get you to have a conversation for it's only going to be 15 minutes with someone that you haven't met properly. Or it could be even better, someone in your organisation but you don't know any of these things about them. If you decide, so you'll have 15 minutes to do that, and then once you've done that, I'm going to pose a challenge, is that you book in 5 of these conversations out of this room over the next month. And if you're genuinely interested in One Sweden, you need to start building relationships. And you need to generally start thinking about what motivates all of you. So there's my challenge. But here's the trick. I'm free tomorrow if anyone wants a one-to-one with me tomorrow. I have a whole day, apart from I think I'm booked in. I've already got the morning. So I'm free if people would like to meet with me. But we can schedule that in later. But there's the challenge. So now 15 minutes. I don't want you to talk about any work. Okay? No work. Just these sorts of questions that are going to get these types of answers.
Wait, can we write this?
All right? Yeah, I'll leave it there for you to...
Can we use this?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Anneli?
Hello.
Ja, gärna.